Watertown City Manager Eric Wagenaar is with us here at the Digital News Desk to talk about the proposed city budget that just came out recently. It does have an 18.8% property tax rate increase. The city manager here to kind of explain how he came up with the numbers, what the process is from here, and just to answer a couple of questions about the budget. So good to see you.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff.
Thanks for
Glad
coming
to be
in.
here.
Appreciate it. How tough of a budget was it to put together? Let's start there.
Yeah, well, we start early in the year, and we mentioned it. I start usually, we'll start next year's budget already. We start hard in January. I put out budget guidance to the directors, and this year I was very direct in saying, we have to go after requirements only. Any what I call disarmaments or things that could maybe wait or that we really don't need, don't even consider it. We looked really hard at equipment purchases, but when we start, basically, we backwards plan for what the budget's due. And we figure out what our requirements are and determine where our revenue sources are going to be. Our primary revenue sources are property taxes, and it's the only revenue source that we actually have control over, and sales tax. We get about $7 million from the state, so you take all those and then we work on what the budget requirements are, and that's where we end up with our levy at the end of the process.
When you look at running a city or your own budget, to go into the next year, the following year, and spend 3% more, and that's what the city's doing in this budget. To run the city, it'll be 3% more to run it. With inflation the way it has been, the cost of whether it's labor as well, that's really not a bad number to be only up 3%, do you think?
I think it's we're happy with the way that came out, Jeff. 2.75 or 3%, whatever, it's about $1.5 million. We're happy with that. I think that's a result of our department heads taking a really hard look at what we're spending our taxpayer dollars on, and that's good. Now, that doesn't alleviate the fact that our residents are going to get a tax increase, and we're really concerned about that. And we know that we got to worry about every dollar we collect from our taxpayers and spend it wisely. And so that's kind of what we did. We didn't want a large growth in the budget, and it was tough, with sales tax being stable and flat, and the cost of goods and inflation, and it's a pretty volatile economic environment out there. And so we were pleased with that number when it came out to that number.
So it's 18.8% on the property tax rate. A $100,000 home could see an increase of $170 in its taxes. But the process isn't over. This is where City Council comes in. They look at what you have presented. What you present, what's the expectation out of what you present? Is it the not bare bones, but the necessities that the city needs after you hear from your department head? Are you supposed to include everything and then council kind of takes it from there? Or is that not the process? Or are you supposed to make it a bloated budget and then they drop things out of it?
Yeah, no, we don't try to make anything bloated.
Yeah.
We try to make it as real as possible. We try to make it as factual as possible. Are there some things there after a discussion and a dialogue and you gather some facts and everybody looks at the budget from their own perspective. And we look at it from my perspective, the comptroller's perspective, our department head's perspective. We may see a project a little different or a piece of equipment a little different than our elected officials and the residents that can give us input. So we'll expect that input to come back. There is no conspiracy theory. There is no, hey, let me build this fat budget and then then we can make all these cuts. We don't, quite frankly, we don't really have time for that.
Right.
So there are probably some items in the budget that the council can decide and deliberate on, and maybe say, hey, well, maybe we should do this next year, or from our perspective, maybe you really don't need it. We appreciate all that input, and that's what the budget process is all about.
Sure, and it is going department by department, and that's why the city brings in, the councilors will bring in the department heads to kind of talk through the budget and why they need this truck or why do they want to have this project be done and make their case, right?
Exactly.
And then the public gets to talk as well, a couple of public hearings. You're doing 2 this year, right?
Yeah, we're going to do in the 2 council meetings in May. We'll stop at the council meeting for a public hearing and let residents come in and tell us what they think about it. Due to your efforts and some other efforts in the community, we're already seeing a lot of that feedback out there already, which is very, very helpful.
Sure.
I mean, it's exactly what we need to hear.
No one will be happy with a close to 20% increase, right? And we'll see what council does. They're able to bring that down. They did last year. You were at 19, I think, ish percent last year. They brought it down to 7-8%. So something similar could happen this year, but something has to give because of the projection and the direction the city is going in, right? We've seen a few years out, the projections from, I think they're from Mr. Mills, right?
That's correct.
So
yeah.
Jim Mills, I'd like his crystal ball because he has a great
Yeah,
prediction
he's
for
usually
sales
pretty
tax.
good. It's pretty
all
right
that,
on, yeah.
But the prediction there is dire that the city will clearly run out of savings and start running into some deficits. And it was, I think, in 26, 27, maybe $9 million of a deficit. Are we still on that track?
Yeah, no, I think we're going to be a little bit higher given where
Worse.
Worse.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that gap is by the time you get out to where the so-called hydro cliff is, it's going to be larger than that, I think. And so I think everything, we do have a lot of efforts going on from our perspective in the city on what we can do to help manage that gap. But I will have to say this, Jeff. I'm not sure the city can do it by ourselves. When it comes to economic development and generating more sales tax and generating more revenue in the North Country region itself, I think we need everybody in that ball game. Because the city can only do so much. We only have so much developable land, and so I'm talking to the county and I'm talking to the towns. I've met with Joel Bartlett the other day from the town of Watertown. I think we got to look at the entire North Country picture and how we continue to keep the city of Watertown capable and relevant to support the North Country.
So what does that mean with the town of Watertown? Kind of sharing services or something, or everything's on the table?
Yeah, everything's potentially sharing services, increasing our water supply to the town as they continue to expand over there, and the sewer and the sewer and the sanitary sewer coming back. Same as over in Pamelia. I think we're all in this together, and same as the county. The city of Watertown, that's why I actually made this budget cover. All roads do lead to Watertown, right? I mean, we have the regional medical center here. We have the regional junior college here. We have the larger employments in the North Country or right around the city of Watertown. This has got to be a team effort.
What about the state? Because that is AIM, right?
Yeah, and that's AIM. Well, we get about $7 million in revenue from the state this year. That helped. That was one of the things that happened last year. I think it was the day after we published our 19%, we got an unexpected $500 million.
That's right.
Or $500,000, and it dropped that tariff, that tax down to 14, if you remember.
Yep.
But they don't have a budget yet, so we don't know. We're kind of counting on that money that we get every year.
So you don't know what that number will be.
We don't know what that number is.
So
right now,
the state budget could come out and it could short you this time. Not expected,
not
but
expected,
it could happen.
Yeah, I think
and that would be worse. So the AIM, what's that stand for? Aid to municipalities.
Municipalities
aid in municipalities, something. But I just want an acronym. I like to explain what they mean.
Yeah.
But that's that money coming in from the state, and so that's a good point. The state budget. Here's an example of a late state budget and the effect on a local government,
That's
right?
Exactly
you have to make
right.
your budget without that puzzle piece.
End of June, we got to have it done, right? Mm-hmm. It's got to be passed and legal. So
you have to pass your budget,
exactly.
But meanwhile in Albany.
So.
Let's go through a few things that are in the budget that I noticed, I guess the one that I keep on thinking about is a major reconstruction of Newell Street. That's a big price tag of $7.5 million. That doesn't all come out of this budget. You begin to pay for it in this budget, or
yeah, majority of that will be bonding.
Yeah,
so it'll have a limited impact on the tax rate.
Okay,
we could use some sewer fund money for that because we'll be doing the sewers. It's just while it looks like a very nice quiet street down there along the river, it has some major sanitary sewer and stormwater sewer and water lines that run underneath that. And if you remember back in August, we had some big problems down there with the flooding.
Right,
and there was some damage that was caused. So we're going to have to redo all that major subsurface infrastructure down there on Newell Street, and so that's a pretty big price tag.
Yeah. So when people see that in the budget, or if they hear about it, it's not something council can just say, okay, we're going to put this off, and that tax increase goes away. You pay for that over time.
You pay for that over the bonding.
With the bonding. Yeah. But that's really a significant improvement to a section of the city, which is growing with the different breweries and a new one coming in down there.
Right. Yeah.
So that's investing in your city.
It really is, and it's an important part of our city, and it's also the major access point for our DPW. And there's some new housing being built, some new apartments down there. There's some good investment going in down there, and we got the riverfront park down there. It is quite beautiful down there.
Yeah. The DPW, you're trying to figure out a new home for that, and you have the land over on Van Duzy, right? What's the latest on that?
Well, I think we've pretty much moved ourselves to the point where we're just not going to be able to in the out years afford a $30 or $40 million new DPW. So we're basically concentrating on what we did with the Van Duzy purchase and build that out a little bit. and then gives us the opportunity then to make some repairs, gives us that swing space necessary to move things over there and make some repairs to our existing infrastructure down there. We're talking to National Grid. They have a big lot down there, potentially to include that in our footprint down there. So I think we're going to basically focus, on intermittent repairs, iterative down there in the DPW footprint to improve some of the administrative space and the storage space we have down there.
Is that sort of an area that you look at when you're talking about shared services, that if the county were to build something new or if the town needed to build something new, where you say, hey, let's talk about doing this together and split the cost? Is that what you mean by shared services?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, where they have their salt requirements for their plowing and snow removal on this side of the city, they use our salt barn already, right? So those kinds of things. I think when you look into intergovernmental services or shared services, it's tough, and that doesn't mean you don't have to look for it. But everybody already is on a pretty tight, narrow budget. So, but we'll continue to look at that. I mean, we actually talked about that because their barns are just outside the city there in Glen Park, and so we actually said, well, maybe we can do something over there as well. We like to keep things in the city as well, but that might be an option for us
with the county, right?
Yeah,
Who's
sure.
just outside the city there. The drinking water situation. You have a couple of expensive projects on tap. One of them being the disinfectant byproducts.
Yeah.
$60 million was the last price tag on that.
Yeah.
Where does that stand? Is that still something that has to be done?
Yep, we're still under the EPA consent order on that, telling us we got to build this treatment facility. The prices come down a little bit, not a lot. And the EGHD is our contracting company that's doing that design, where I think they're going to be hitting 90% design here shortly. And hopefully it will break ground this fall for that facility. And
Still looking for grant money or
still
ways
looking
to
for
pay
grant
for
money.
it,
We're
right?
waiting for the Department of Defense Defense Community Infrastructure Program to open up still. The window's not open. We don't have a notice of opportunity for them yet. We're actually working right now with Labella and GHD on some other contracts, primary GHD for a state IMA grant, intermediate grant for that as well. And so we're going to continue to work on those grants because that is a significant impact on the water rates for our residents and our customers outside the city. And then of course in the reservoir, we're moving on that pretty quickly. We saw the bond get approved. We're hopefully by the end of the month of May we'll have that added to the environmental facilities grant program, and then we'll compete for those grants as well.
Yeah, just so people watching understand, when you have your water and sewer facilities, they run as a separate entity than your city budget. So users would also pay for that. It's just not a city of Watertown. So Fort Drum, Luray,
Pamelia,
Town of Watertown.
right?
All of them become customers of that and would be affected by any sort of increase that's there. Now, that has to be built, that byproduct, disinfectant, whatever.
Disinfectant byproduct
plant. That
right,
thing.
Yeah.
That has to be built because the city failed or some testing failed and some numbers were high, right?
Right, yeah.
But in the last little bit, those numbers haven't been high, but we're still on track to have to do this, right?
Right, yeah, no, we've been, we've continued to test, obviously, and so I think for the last 24 months, we've had no major problems in that area.
For the last 2 years?
For the last 2 years, right.
No problem.
Yeah, but
still have to build this.
But still, yeah, and so, but the problem is this has been going on for over a decade, from what I understand, and so we engage with the EPA on it all the time. They're pretty adamant that this consent order stands, and so we'll continue to move in this direction. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, if you pop a number because it's too high and they tell you have to do it, but then you're 2 years clean.
Right.
That's got to be frustrating.
It is frustrating, but there's a reason for it, and it's not just us; it's also the water we present to provide to our outside customers, and so we're going to continue to monitor that. And once we get the design done, I'm sure we'll have another engagement and another discussion with the EPA.
Yeah, well,
because the other factor we have, the Development Authority of the North Country, which manages the water contract for Fort Drum. And of course, they're our partners in that, and so we've got to ensure that they stay tied into us as well.
The budget starts the decommissioning or demolishing the Altieri pool, right?
Yeah.
And what's the idea after that? Because it's not just take it away. The city is looking to add to something down
Sure,
there,
yeah.
right?
So it's such an amazing facility down that whole complex down there. It's just amazing. So I don't want to get in front of the council on that and see what they want to do, but I think what our vision for that would be is that let's do something with it, right? Instead of having an empty pool sitting there. Mm-hmm. And one of the options, should the council decide to move in that direction, is for us to build pickleball courts, which seems to be the sport of the day nowadays.
Right.
And build some pickleball courts and maybe an outdoor basketball court right there next to the arena, so you can add to that complex. And the further vision, if we can hopefully get some recreational grant money, would be to have an outdoor skating rink out there as well, because we have such a demand for ice time. Everybody will tell you, we always used to have outdoor skating rinks in the city of Watertown, 3 or 4 of them,
Sure.
To include the Park Circle. And so we have a high demand for ice time. If we could build, it's just a vision, and again, it's just something we've talked about. If we could tie into the cooling system for the ice inside the arena and make that ice stable out there, because that's the problem nowadays with outdoor rinks, is who knows
Right.
what the weather's going to be like.
Yep.
And then have a permanent outdoor rink out there most of the winter time, where you could do pickup skating, or you could have the smaller hockey teams playing, and have more available ice time for the city. And so that's one of the things we've tossed out there.
One of the biggest parts of the budget, public safety, right?
Absolutely.
Between police and fire department, and frankly, it's a thing on people's minds. Residents want that, right? Any major changes in the budget for those two departments?
No, actually, it is high dollar. I have to admit, it's about $13 million a piece for each of the departments, and but it's important. It's what we do, right? It's public
Sure.
safety is the number one
It's
thing.
pretty much half your budget.
It's pretty much half our budget, and no major changes. We did. The police chief and I had a discussion about a vacancy that had been over there for a while, and he said, "Okay, well, let's not fill it." So that saved us money for the budget as well. But no major equipment purchases. We need to buy some additional police cruisers, but we actually cut some vehicles out of there as well. And we limited any purchase on the fire department as well, and we pushed some of those things to the next year. So I think we're pretty stable in those two arenas.
Golf course continues to operate. The person running it, though, he's moving away because I think his family is moving out of the area.
Yep.
So for this year, I've noticed in the budget there's an empty spot there. Just for this year, though, you're going to save a little money with the person running that, or what's the plan there?
Yeah, the plan is Jordan's going to leave mid-July. He's going to try and get through the city tournament and anniversary, and then what we think we can do with some of the other additional help we have up there is get enough handoff to those folks to carry us through the end of the season in early October, and then obviously we would save some of those dollars. We're going to continue to talk with the council on this, on what's the way forward for the golf course in general, but we have some options we're going to present to them probably shortly after the budget season's done, and hopefully add some predictability, or one way or the other, for the golf course.
Let's go back to the deficit that the city is facing. Watertown's not alone in that, right?
No.
I mean, isn't this a problem at many municipalities across New York State?
It's absolutely a problem for a lot of the municipalities. You got a shrinking tax base, losing population. So you're losing tax base to your property taxes. You got sales tax now this year even more. We don't know how volatile that's going to be. It's a significant, property taxes is 20% of our budget. Sales tax is $24 million of our budget. So it's those things are uncertain at this point in time. So, and then you have aging infrastructure. You have increasing costs of goods. You have increasing labor costs. Increasing healthcare costs, or increasing retirement system costs. We don't control those, and so the only revenue source we control is property tax, and so it is causing problems across many of the municipalities. I've mentioned to some of our folks in the elected side of the House, saying, I think the state and some of the folks have to get serious about where this annual money we give to our municipalities. And they ought to kind of do. I'd recommend they do some of the same things we do. I know they do, but let's talk about what's required and what's not required at the state level as well.
A lot of the infrastructure has been. I've seen a lot of the projects. Right, we talk about a lot of the projects that have been done with COVID money. Right, it was that a lot of money that was Fed money that was used. If you had to, how much of the city's infrastructure has been replaced or updated? Do you have any idea?
That's a good question. I don't have a number for you, but I know we did 5 or 6 streets, major street rehauls over with the ARPA money. We did all the downtown DRI repairs and upgrades. I don't have a good number on that. I know that we have majority of our subsurface structure for our water distribution system and our sewer systems is still over 100 years old, 70, 80 to 100 years old. So it's still the majority. I don't know.
It's been a lot of money for a lot of projects, but really it's probably a drop in the bucket when it comes to what needs to be done.
Yeah, and that's the science of it, right? What do you just wait for something to break? You remember during the wintertime we had a lot of water distribution breaks, and the great department did great work going out there even on Christmas, cold weather, nasty weather, fixing those water systems to get people water during the holidays. And same as DPW fixing sewers now and cleaning up sewers. We have the WATS program, the WATS problem, and the Western Alpha problem we have to start spending money on as well. Because that's under consent orders as well. So. It's just we're gonna have to continue to spend money on those things, and we got to find the money to spend on those, and we can't just keep bonding, right? We have to manage our bond rates as well.
Yeah, and in fact, you are bonding for some stuff, and that debt, if you look at the charts that you have in your budget, you can see where your responsibility for some of this debt is already baked in. Yeah, you don't want to add to that.
Exactly. We do a great job keeping that paid down as much as we can. But when you look at your bond ratings, one of the concerns that any bond company will have is what is your current debt,
right?
How volatile is your revenue, and so we got to manage that. We got to maintain that good bond rating.
The hydro contract. Let's talk about that because it does, as you mentioned, the cliff, the hydro cliff, and it comes due at the end of 2030, millions of dollars each year for the city of Watertown. Are we any closer to an answer than we were 5 years ago, before your time, when everybody was screaming then, and they had a committee saying we need to come up with a solution? Yeah. Are we any closer to a solution on that?
I don't think we have. We've picked a specific course of action in order to address it. What I do know is what we're doing as a staff, and we are pulling together now the team to start working on what are the potential solutions. And there are some questions out there, and do we hire another hydro? Do we hire a consultant, or do we? How do we move to that final solution 4 or 5 years from now, just on the hydro revenue, and how does the city then manage it when we end up taking over the entire hydroelectrical production process from National Grid, or not?
Right. Yeah. What are the options there? And just spitball some options. But some people will say, well, we have a hydro plant, we have a city, let's provide power to the city. Right. Is that easy to do, or is that just a monstrous project to take on?
We're not a utility company,
yeah.
Right? So how do you step in an engineering, electrical supply, corporation, so to speak, like National Grid or some of these others? There's dozens of them around. So do you want to take that responsibility on as a city, or do you want to contract that out with another company to do that for you? Those are some of the options. And then we do buy our power from National Grid for a majority of the city facilities at a reduced rate. And so you got to build all that into what's your final process going to be? Do we continue to buy that power at that rate, or do we manage it another way? So it's that's one of the options, obviously, is take over and start selling electricity ourselves. I don't know if we're going to have the growth capacity to do that within the city, or do you find a company to do that for you?
Have you had any meetings with National Grid?
I have. Yeah, we had a meeting, and then they've provided us 3 options that we should start looking at. I don't have them in front of me. I don't recall what they are, but they said, well, here's something you guys might want to start thinking about. So we've had a meet. So I met with those guys about 4 weeks ago. And we're looking at those options as well. So we're gonna start putting the team together. That's really what we need to do, is put the team together to start coming up with the right way forward.
The reason it's such a big deal is because the price that you're paid for the electricity at the hydro plant is so much higher than what it would be on the market, right?
Yeah.
What is it? 30 cents, 30
Yeah,
cents.
easy. Yeah, it goes up every year.
Kilowatt.
Yeah,
I
so,
don't.
yeah, I don't
But
know what the current number is, but it's millions of dollars, right?
Yeah.
Above market, right?
If it's 30 cents, the market rate's like 3 cents.
3 cents, right.
So, I
So-
mean, you're getting a lot, and it runs out in 2030. And I've heard some people spitball this idea of like, well, renegotiate the contract with National Grid, make it go longer,
Yeah.
but don't get paid the 30. Maybe it's 15, so then they're not paying out. Anything like that is a possibility. Or
It's
not
been
really?
floated a little bit,
Yeah.
Jeff. But quite frankly, I don't think that's really in the direction they want to move at this particular point. So, but we've kind of floated that a couple times
Yeah.
that I've met with them.
But, so the goal is at the end of this, though, to have it continue to be revenue generating.
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
benefit to the
Yeah.
city.
We're going to still, our license goes to 2035. We're going to continue to, but. In 4 or 5 years, we're going to start working that licensing process, and we're going to still run that hydro plant. I did a terrain walk over there yesterday. All 3 turbines were running great, and it was looking good, and so it's generating a lot of revenue for us, and we're going to want to continue to generate that revenue in some capacity.
So as we wrap this up, what is your message to the city? And the council is in charge of where this budget goes. You present it, though, but you're the person that is looking out with your staff, Mr. Mills, and more, but you're looking out at the health of the city financially. What is your message to the community, if you have any concerns about that, or what they should kind of think about, not just year to year, but 5 years out? What's your message about where the city's going?
Yeah, well, I will say this, Jeff, and I thanks for that opportunity, is we put a lot of energy and effort, and as expected, into developing these budgets. And we know that every tax dollar that we ask the city residents to pay means something to us. And we don't want to waste that. And so we're looking for everything, whether it's a road, where my guidance to them, or street, my guidance is you got to do the worst to first, whether it's a project, whether it's a piece of equipment, do we really need to spend? And of course, we get a lot of the revenue sources, but my basic comment is, do we need to spend taxpayer dollars on this thing, on this project, on this equipment? And hopefully we came close to getting that right this year. We're going to continue to do that. And I know it means a lot to somebody to have to give up another $150 or $200 out of their stretched budgets in the city, and we take it seriously, and my staff takes it seriously. We're going to continuously look at organizational structures, efficiencies, technology, and to make things that we can provide maybe a better service at lower cost, better efficiency at lower cost. We're shaking all those trees, and we're going to continue to do that. We're going to work with the state. We're going to continue to work for grant funding. We're going to do everything we can to keep the tax levy as low as we can possibly make it.
What is the city doing well right now? What do you think one thing the city does really well?
Yeah, I will tell you. I think we had a great winter with the DPW. I think 180 plus inches of snow, and I think the streets were clear and fine. I think we have a great part. I think we do a lot well, Jeff. I think, quite frankly, I try to, when I drive down the streets in our city, I see a lot of well-kept lawns. I see a lot of good things going on. I see a lot of flowers. I see a lot of people keeping up their homes. And yeah, will there be the eventual house that has some trash out there? And we're working on that. But I think the city looks good, and I think we have a lot of dedicated residents. And so we're going to continue to support them. I think we have, the pools are great. The park is great. And we're working really hard as a staff to keep the city moving in a positive direction. And there's a lot of positive stuff going on in the city.
And the follow-up would be, what do you think the city could do better? Anything come to mind where the city could improve?
Yeah, I think one of the things we have to work on is this the vacant homes. And I have a meeting next week. I've invited the county administrator to come to that meeting. I invited Reg Schweitzer from Neighbors to come to that meeting, because I think that's going to be a community effort as well. I think there's things we can do to either help eliminate some of the houses that are really dangerous and falling apart, but also come up with plans on what do we do with a house that's still savable, and maybe turn that house around back into a tax-producing home, and maybe get some of the unhoused people into those homes. So that is more of a strategy. I think that's something we definitely have to do better. We continue to work on it. I continue to work with the county also on the homeless population, and so I think we got to continue to put efforts in those two areas for sure.
Last question, I promise. I have to reflect, or at least I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up your past with Fort Drum and your relationship with that,
Sure.
right? And there's some more soldiers coming into Drum, as we heard probably about 6 or 8 months ago, maybe
Right.
a year ago that was confirmed. So you kind of, is the city positioning itself to be ready for that? Because those are people that could buy property here and,
Yeah.
and help the economy, of course. Is there any update on that you know of?
I haven't met with folks out there in a couple months, but I think it's time to do that again. I know they're real busy out there. Other divisions deployed again down to the southern border.
Sure.
They have got brigades moving and going and coming. That's one thing about Fort Drum is it moves very, very fast out there.
So let me just ask, how does your past relationship, help you in your position today? Because I think that you could make the case.
Sure.
I would make the case that it does.
Sure. I talk to the senior leaders out there periodically and let them know what's going on in the city and what they're doing out there. I think we should continue to communicate with them and work on having marketing opportunities and development opportunities. I think that as a city and as the county and the North Country, we always got to be focused on maintaining our military value for Fort Drum and to make sure that the Pentagon and the decision makers in D.C. keep that place going out there.
Yeah.
So I continuously remind people of that. Continue to fight for additional stationing activities out there and bring soldiers and families to Fort Drum. We benefit so much from that fort out there. We so many of our employees and are that we hire in the city and then hire in our businesses here in the city come from Fort Drum. It's a win, and plus they bring all the diversity to our North Country. It's huge for us.
Yeah.
You can always talk about the $2 billion economic impact. I like to look at it from the human standpoint and just the diversity and the employees and the families that join our schools. Whatever we can do to continue to make that continue to happen is important for us.
Eric Wagenaar, City Manager for Watertown, here to talk about the budget. A couple of stray questions, but I appreciate you taking them. But budget season, and good luck with it. We appreciate the insight here today.
Well, thanks, Jeff. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right.
Thanks.